Let's begin our web design journey by learning about HTML. We're going to understand the basics of HTML, the structure, the syntax, and where it fits into the world of web design. HTML is the language of the web. It is the language that we're going to use to create web pages. It is short for Hypertext Markup Language. When you think of the word hypertext, I want you to think of more than text. So if someone was a hyperspaz, they'd be more than spaz. So hypertext is kind of a way of saying more than text. When you're writing web pages, you're doing much more than just marking up text. So HTML is read and interpreted by a browser. In order to make sense of HTML, a browser must be involved. The browser will interpret the HTML you write and then display it on the page, normally alongside some CSS. Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web, also created HTML. The W3C is a consortium that manages the web standards that have to do with HTML. Like all languages, especially technical languages, HTML evolves and changes, and so there must be a standards body to make sure that these changes are documented, that everyone agrees upon them, and that they are universally accepted. The current version of HTML is HTML5. So web pages are made up of what are called elements. Elements can be a number of different things. It can be headings or images, as in this case. You place elements on a page using what are called tags. Here I have an example of two different elements. I have an H1 heading and an image. You will notice that the H1 that says Go Bananas has what's called an opening and closing tag. The closing tag has that / before the name of the element. Below that, you will see that there's an image element. That is what puts the banana GIF on the screen. This does not require an opening and closing tag. So HTML elements are what a web page consists of. Elements are placed on the page using what are called tags. So here's a closer look at a tag. What happens is you mark up content using tags. That's how you put things on a web page. In this particular case, my content is Go Bananas. And on the left side is the start tag, and on the right side is the end tag. Notice how the end tag has the /. I've got a great video here I want you to watch. It's called HTML5 Basics Tags. And as always, I've given you 3 guiding questions. Make sure you return to the presentation, that you watch this video, and that you can answer all 3 of the guiding questions before you move on. Images are an example of what we call void elements. Some elements do not require opening and closing tags. They just require one opening tag. An image is a perfect example. So here, my start tag is all I need. Inside the tag, you will see that there is something called SRC. This is what we call an attribute. And attributes always go in the opening part of your tag. In this particular case, I know what image to put on the page because the SRC attribute points to the image. So this is an example of what you will see a lot of. You will see the element, which is IMG, and then you will see one or more attributes which help refine that element. So just remember, there are certain elements that do not require an opening and closing tag. There's no content to place in between them, so all you need is the start tag. We call these void elements. Attributes, just like in our previous example, inside the start tag, inside the opening tag, you will often see these name-value pairs. For an image, you'll see something like SRC, which points to the image, its location on the internet. In this example, you see another one called alt. Alt basically is set to whatever text you want to show if for some reason the image cannot load. So these are called attributes, and they always go in the start or opening tag. They help you refine the HTML elements you put on a page. A web page is like you. It has a very particular structure. It has one head and one body in that order. Web pages are structured like this. HTML is what we call the root tag. And you'll see that within HTML we have 2 more sets of tags, the head and the body. A web page is like you. It has one head and one body in that order. Web pages are structured like this. Everything goes within HTML, and then there's 2 primary sections, the head and the body. Before the HTML element, you will see a special tag called doc type. Doc type basically tells the browser what version of HTML is this page written in. The one I show here that says doc type HTML represents HTML5, the current version of HTML. The head contains metadata. In this example, you'll see that the head contains a title element. That gives us the title of our page. And then the body contains the page's content. Anything you want the user to see on your page goes in the body. Anything that has to do with how the page is set up, metadata, goes in the head. Metadata is a strange word. It's basically means data about data. So any information that's necessary to put the page together, that goes in your head. But the stuff that people actually see on the screen, that needs to go within the body element. You'll notice in this example how there's an image element inside the body, because an image is something you would normally see on a web page. So a web page is like you. It has a head and a body in that order. The head is for metadata and the body's for content. I want you to think about it as a human being. The things in your head, the thoughts, no one can see those. That's sort of like metadata. But your body, the rest of the world can see. And so anything you want the user to see goes inside the body. At this point, you may be wondering to yourself, if a web page is built using tags, why can't I see those tags? Why are they never shown to me? Well, the truth is, it's the browser's job to parse web pages, to look at the tags, and then render a page that you see. So the tags are there. They're behind the scenes all the time. But the browser's job is to interpret those tags and show you a web page that humans like you and I could understand. If for some reason you need to see the behind the scenes HTML, you can use what's called developer tools. In my case, I am in Google Chrome. And as you can see, if I go into my developer tools, I can see the HTML that makes up the page that I'm viewing. Like I just discussed with you guys, the doc type is the first thing you'll see in a web page, and then you'll see a head and a body. So if you're ever skeptical about anything you're learning in the class, I strongly recommend that you look at the developer tools and you will be able to prove everything out. What's great about the developer tools is that you can choose the code and it will highlight the thing on the page that code is drawing. So it's a great place to learn about web development and to troubleshoot problems. So depending upon what platform you're on, the commands are different. On Windows, F12 will get you to developer tools most of the time in Google Chrome, or you can use Control-Shift-I. On a Mac, it's Command-Option-I. In addition to tags, you can also place something called comments in web pages. Comments are exactly what they sound like. They're useful text that you can leave behind for the next person who's going to work on the web page to understand why you coded things the way you did. Comments are just in the code. They are ignored by the browser. You place them within a special set of tags that starts with the less than angle bracket, exclamation dash dash, and closes with the dash dash greater than angle bracket. So comments are very useful. They help explain what it is that you did, but the person viewing your web page will never see them. So in this particular case, I have a paragraph on the page. It says it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And above that, I have a little comment, says Charles Dickens quote. So just in case the next developer didn't know what that quote was, the comment makes it clear. But as you can see from my example, it doesn't show up on the screen. So comments do not show up on the screen, and this is one way in which you can leave behind helpful text about why you wrote what you did. Let's review the most important required HTML elements just to get started, just to build a basic web page. The first thing you'll notice is HTML. This is what we call the root element. Here you can see that everything resides within HTML. All other elements will go within this element, this set of tags. You can see right here I have an attribute called lang, and it has a value of en. This is kind of a techie way of saying that this page is written in English. So an HTML element is the root element. It creates the document, and this is where you place your one head and your one body. The head comes next, and the head contains metadata, things like the title of your page. The title is what you normally see on the tab in your browser. It goes within the head, and you want to make sure that you use this so that when people have multiple tabs open, they'll be able to find the page that you've written. Next comes the body. We call this the document body. This comes right after the head, and this is where you put all the content that you want the user to actually see. In this case, I have one element within the body element called image, and this is my banana picture. So we've got your HTML root element followed by the head, followed by the body. Very important. Throughout this course, you are going to be learning about a lot of different tags, a lot of different elements that you can place on the page. There are hundreds of them. And so to aid this process, I will always provide you with a link to the Mozilla Developer Network. So I always want you to go back to the presentation, and I want you to click on the link that says HTML element reference, and I want you to delve deeper into the tags that I teach you about. This is a reference for you. You are not supposed to memorize tags. You are supposed to refer to the documentation. That's what all good developers do. I want you to pay close attention to the attributes and the examples in each. This is ultimately how people learn to code. Every video presentation will have an accompanying Thimble mini project. The idea is to get you hands-on experience with whatever topic it is that we're studying. In this case, we are going to be doing a mini project I call HTML Basics that's going to get you started with how to write HTML. If you haven't seen Thimble before, it's really cool. It is a what you see is what you get tool, otherwise known as WYSIWYG. So whatever you type on the left in the editor shows up on the right. So the right is your web page, the left is the HTML that generates the web page. So this is a great way to see immediately the impact of the HTML that you are writing. Like we discussed in this presentation, all web pages start with a doc type, which explains to the browser what version of HTML the web page is written in, followed by one head and one body in that order. The head contains metadata, and the body contains whatever content you want to be displayed on the page. So if I wanted to put a heading on the page, I would type my HTML within the body. Here I have an opening and closing H1 tag. Between the opening and closing tag is the content that I want to mark up. Now in some cases, there are elements you'll place on the page that do not require an opening and closing tag. For example, images. In this case, I have an image. Notice how it only has the open tag. You could close it like this if you'd like, but you can also close it like this. Inside the opening part of the tag are attributes, name-value pairs that refine the element. The src attribute points to where the image is, and the alt attribute is the text to show on the page if we couldn't load the image. So if for some reason I misspelled this, you will see the alt text. It's that simple. So hopefully you will find Thimble to be very intuitive. There are detailed tutorials for every single project I give you. So just make sure that you pay attention very closely and see me with any questions.